She was laughing, laughing as I stood there in the doorway, breath caught somewhere between my lungs and the scream I didn't know I was holding in. Her head tilted back, dark curls spilling over my silk pillow like ink across a page. One bare leg curled around his waist. My fiancé, my David, and her. My best friend Alyssa. The girl I once held as she sobbed over broken hearts. The girl who swore we'd grow old together, cradling champagne flutes and memories. Her laugh turned into a gasp when she saw me. David stammered something about it being a mistake, a moment of weakness, something idiotic and meaningless. But her eyes didn't lie. She wasn't sorry. She was caught. And worse, she looked smug. Didn't speak. Not that night. Not even when he reached for his boxers or when she yanked the sheet over her chest, as if modesty would save her now. I walked out like a ghost slipping through a room. Numbness is a hell of a thing. It wraps around you like armor. It lets you keep your head high when your heart's dragging behind like a corpse. For days I didn't cry. I planned. That's what. No one tells you about heartbreak. It's fertile ground for vengeance. And mine would come wrapped in ivory cardstock and calligraphy. They thought I disappeared because I was shattered. I let them think that. I let them enjoy the quiet. I posted nothing, answered no one, and ghosted the entire wedding party. My mother worried. My maid of honor called 3 times a day. Alyssa didn't call at all. Not once. Guilt has a way of stifling even the boldest voices. But while they relaxed into their silence, I spent my days with a graphic designer, wine-stained, napkins and revenge burning like gasoline in my chest. I created an invitation so beautiful, so exquisitely crafted, no one would dare ignore it. The envelope shimmered, the lettering sparkled. The wax seal bore a custom insignia. I mailed it with trembling hands. Inside, the invitation read, "You're invited to a celebration of loyalty, betrayal, and unexpected unions. Date, time, location. All real, all legitimate." A castle estate in the countryside I'd rented for the occasion, surrounded by vineyards and thorns. Alyssa received hers 3 weeks before the event. I imagined her fingers grazing the edges, imagined her gut tightening with confusion. I bet. She read it twice, probably even smiled a little, thinking I'd forgiven her. Thinking maybe, just maybe, she was still going to be part of my story. But she had no idea I'd rewritten the ending. The day of the wedding, guests arrived, dressed to the nines, drawn by curiosity and the scent of scandal. No one knew who the groom was. That was the point. I wore white, goddess white, not bride white, with a slit up the thigh and vengeance in every step. David was there too, stupidly hopeful, fidgeting by the bar. He looked good. Regret suited him. Alyssa arrived late, fashionably so, in a champagne gown that clung to her like a lie. Her eyes scanned the crowd, narrowed when she couldn't find the bridal party, sharpened when she saw me, alone. Smiling, she approached slowly. "You look amazing." Her voice quivered at the end. "I know," I said. My champagne flute caught the sun as I raised it. "Glad you came. You got the invitation?" She nodded. I wasn't sure if—" "You're exactly where you're supposed to be." I smiled wider. She didn't. The music shifted. A hush fell. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming," I said, climbing the steps of the stone terrace. "Especially those who love me, and those who pretended to." Eyes turned, heads tilted. Alyssa froze. David paled. Today isn't a wedding. Not mine, at least. Today is a reckoning. For every woman who's been betrayed by someone she trusted, for every friend who held your hand with one and stabbed your back with the other. My voice was ice and thunder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. David took a step toward me. "Natalie, what are you doing?" I turned on him. "What you did, David. With her. In our bed." The air grew electric. Alyssa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I reached into the bouquet on the podium and pulled out a small stack of letters, tied with ribbon. These are love letters. Not from David, from me, to myself. A reminder that I don't need to beg for scraps when I deserve a feast. People clapped. Actually clapped. My aunt whistled. Then I dropped the letters into the flame of a nearby candelabra, watching them curl into ash as the crowd erupted. Alyssa backed away, eyes wide, lips parted in disbelief. "You invited me here to humiliate me?" she whispered. "No," I said, stepping down from the platform. "I invited you to show you what I look like when I rise. And I hadn't even gotten to the real twist yet." She stood there, stuck between shock and rage, like a porcelain doll in a storm, beautiful, brittle, and absolutely powerless. Her cheeks flushed crimson, the kind of red that isn't born of shame, but of fury at being outplayed. She opened her mouth, probably to spit some venom laced with self-pity, but I didn't give her the floor. Not anymore. I raised my glass again, turning to the crowd, and with a smile colder than crystal, I said, "Now, please join me in the ballroom for the second part of tonight's event, the unveiling." The word hung in the air like perfume, and "Poison!" people murmured, shifting toward the arched entrance of the grand stone hall. Alyssa and David didn't move, caught in the thick, sticky web of confusion. I walked ahead, heels sharp against the marble, heart drumming to a rhythm of sweet retribution. The massive doors opened, and there it was, my masterpiece. A gallery of betrayal. Photos lined the walls, illuminated in soft golden light, but these weren't photos of joy or love or friendship. These were surveillance stills. Hidden camera, captures, screenshots, hotel receipts, text messages, all carefully curated, beautifully framed. A whole exhibit dedicated to exposing the secret affair they thought they'd buried beneath whispers and shadows. One wall showed a series of images, David's unmistakable frame entering a boutique hotel. Hours later, Alyssa, stepping out of the same door, sunglasses on, head down. Another wall bore screenshots, texts dripping with lust and deceit. I can't stop thinking about last night. "You're so much more exciting than her." I wish she'd just disappear already. The crowd gasped, murmured. Someone actually said, "Holy shit." And in the middle of the room, on a pedestal like a piece of fine art, sat the wedding band David gave me, still in its box, untouched, useless, a relic of a future that never would be. Alyssa staggered in behind me, her hand to her mouth, eyes darting around the room like a panicked animal. David was behind her, chest heaving, staring at the walls as if they'd suddenly begun bleeding. "You had someone follow us?" she said, voice high, sharp, cracking at the edges. I tilted my head. "No need. David's not as subtle as he thinks." He lunged forward. "You invaded our privacy." "Our privacy?" I laughed, soft and bitter. "You mean the privacy you two destroyed in my home? In my bed? Tell me, where was my privacy then?" No answer. Just silence, thick and humiliating. People weren't just watching. They were recording, phones out, flashing, capturing the collapse of a pair who thought they were the puppeteers, not the show. I let them. Let every click of the camera feed the truth I'd bottled for weeks. "You don't get to play the victim," I said, walking past Alyssa, close enough to feel her trembling. "You're not even the villain. You're the footnote." She grabbed my wrist suddenly, her voice low and desperate. "Why are you doing this? I loved you. I was your best friend." I looked, her in the eyes for the first time in what felt like years. "And I was yours. But you killed that when you climbed into bed with the one person you knew I trusted with everything." She let go of me like she'd touched fire. David, for once, was silent. No excuses, no stammering apologies. He knew it was over. Not just us, but his reputation, his shiny image, his future. The man standing there wasn't the confident fiancé I once adored. He was a ghost in a tuxedo, undone and exposed. "I was going to marry you," he finally muttered. "No," I said softly. "You were going to betray me for the rest of your life. I just stopped the ceremony early." With that, I turned to the crowd and lifted my hands as the music swelled. A quartet in the corner began playing a triumphant piece, violins rising. Like a phoenix. "Tonight isn't a wedding," I said, "but it is a celebration. A toast to freedom, to truth, to finally walking away from people who never deserved me." Applause exploded like thunder. Champagne was poured. The lights brightened. The bar opened. The crowd moved like a tide, leaving Alyssa and David shipwrecked. In the center of the ballroom, I danced that night. Danced until my feet ached and my heart felt lighter than it had in years. I laughed with my friends, real friends, who toasted to my courage and whispered, "God, I wish I had your spine." I caught glimpses of them trying to leave, faces hidden behind their hands, slinking into the dark like rats from a burning house. But before they vanished completely, I stopped them. They were halfway down the gravel path when I stepped out into the moonlight, the night air cold enough to sting, but not enough to drown the fire roaring in my chest. The crunch of their footsteps stopped abruptly. Alyssa turned first, flinching when she saw me. David lingered behind her, hunched like a shadow, afraid of its own shape. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence stretch between us, taut and breathless. The wind tugged at the trees, their branches whispering secrets like the ones they'd buried in my absence. "You weren't going to say goodbye?" I asked, my voice velvet smooth and sharp enough to bleed. Alyssa's throat bobbed. "What else do you want from us?" she whispered. And though her mascara had begun to run, her pride clung to her like a second skin. "You already humiliated us in front of everyone." "No," I said, stepping closer. "That wasn't humiliation. That was exposition." David looked up. His face was hollow. I could see now how tired he was beneath the carefully combed hair and tailored jacket. "Natalie, please," he started, and the sound of my name from his lips felt like poison soaked in honey. "We made a mistake. I was stupid. I was confused." "Save it," I cut in, my eyes locked on his. "You weren't confused when you bought her those earrings, or when you booked that hotel room the day after our engagement party." His jaw tightened. "How do you know?" "Because I've known everything for weeks, David. You just didn't know I was watching." Alyssa looked as if she might crumple into herself. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked, voice shaking. "Why didn't you confront us then?" I stepped even closer, until we were just feet apart, until she could see the wildfire behind my calm. "Because I wanted to see how deep you'd dig the hole. I wanted to give you rope, and you tied the noose yourself." She blinked rapidly, shaking her head. "You don't know what it was like, always being second to you. You always had everything. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect man." I laughed, low and disbelieving. "So that's what this is? You slept with the love of my life because of a competition I never entered?" Her silence answered for her. David looked like he wanted to disappear. His hands twitched at his sides, and for a moment I saw the boy I had once loved, scared and fragile and far too small for the weight of my devotion. I hated that a part of me still remembered what his laugh sounded like in the morning. I hated that I had to tear those memories out like weeds, one by one. "I'm not the villain here," Alyssa said suddenly, her voice sharper now. "You think you're some kind of heroine, some avenging angel, but you're just a bitter ex playing God with people's lives." I stepped forward until I was inches from her face. "No, Alyssa, I'm the reckoning, and you brought this on yourself." She flinched and I stepped back, breathing in the cool air like it was new oxygen. "Go," I said. "Go crawl back to whatever hole you came from, but don't ever expect to come near me again. Don't call. Don't text. Don't dare whisper my name like you ever loved me." David tried once more. "Natalie," I held up a hand. "You made your choice, David. You chose what was easy, what was cheap. You'll wake up next to your mistake every morning now, and one day, you'll look at her and remember this night. And you'll realize you didn't just lose me. You lost everything good you ever had." His lips parted. But there was nothing left to say. They turned, and this time, I didn't stop. Them. I watched them walk away, her heels sinking into the soft gravel, his shoulders slouched like he was dragging the weight of guilt behind him. When they disappeared beyond the iron gates, I turned back toward the castle. The music inside had shifted into something light and jazzy. Laughter spilled out into the night, and warm light beckoned like an open palm. I went back in, back to my guests, back to my story, because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything I'd ever deserved. And I still had one last surprise, waiting inside for the crowd. One last twist that no one, not even Alyssa or David, could have predicted. The ballroom was alive when I stepped back in, thrumming with energy, 1,000 conversations spinning like gold threads in the air. People smiled when they saw me. They raised glasses. They whispered my name. They reached for my hands as I passed like I was something sacred, something reborn, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. At the far end of the room, the velvet curtain that had been drawn all night still hung heavy against the wall. Behind it waited the final part of my plan, the secret I'd guarded closer than anything else. I felt the weight of it settle. In my bones as I crossed the floor, the steady click of my heels beating like a drum roll. I took the microphone from the DJ, feeling the cool metal between my fingers. The music faded to a low hum, then silence. All eyes lifted toward me. "Tonight has been about truth," I said, my voice even, the room folding into the palm of my hand. "About seeing people for who they really are. About burning down the illusions we let ourselves live inside." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. I let it build, savoring it, feeling it lift me higher. "And now," I continued, turning toward the curtain, "for the final reveal." I nodded to the stagehands. The curtains drew back with a slow, theatrical sweep. Behind them, bathed in golden light, stood a series of towering panels. On each one was a letter, handwritten in my own script, enormous and undeniable. A letter to myself. The first panel read, "You deserved better from the very beginning." The next, "You were never too much. They were simply too little." And then, "You are not defined by the people who failed to love you properly." The final panel, "You are your own salvation." Gasps filled the room, but they weren't sharp and cruel like before. They were soft, awed, reverent. A few people clapped without meaning to. Some wiped tears from their eyes. I walked slowly along the panels as if strolling through a garden, letting each word sink deep into the bones of everyone watching. "This," I said, my voice thick with emotion I didn't hide anymore, "is my wedding gift to myself. Not bitterness, not regret. Freedom." The DJ picked up the cue perfectly. A new song poured through the speakers, bright, wild, triumphant. A beat you couldn't help but move to. The dance floor exploded. Strangers pulled each other into dizzy, laughing circles. Old friends linked arms and spun. I stood at the edge for a moment, watching it all. The life I had reclaimed, the future I had ripped back from the people who thought they could destroy it. And then, smiling so hard my cheeks hurt, I let myself be pulled into the dance. We laughed, we cried, we screamed the lyrics to songs we loved when we were teenagers. My hair stuck to the back of my neck, my heels dangled from my fingers, and I didn't care about anything except this moment. Hours later, under a sky bursting with stars, I stood on the balcony of the castle with a glass of champagne, my dress, wrinkled and perfect, my soul lighter than it had been in years. A few guests remained, toasting to the madness of the night. Somewhere in the distance, the first hints of dawn crept along the horizon, soft and gold and full of promise. I thought of Alyssa and David, slinking away into their shame, bound together now not by love, but by the heavy chains of guilt and betrayal. Thought of the girl I had been, trusting, hopeful, a little too willing to believe in fairy tales, and I thought of the woman I had become. I smiled to myself, raising the glass high into the cool morning air. To new beginnings, I whispered, and somewhere deep inside me, a door slammed shut forever, locking away the ghosts, the heartbreak, the lies, while ahead, endless doors swung open. Into the light. I didn't just survive them, I outgrew them, and nothing had ever tasted sweeter. Would you also like a short epilogue where Alyssa and David's fate is revealed years later? It could be even more dramatic.